Today on Elite Wellness Academy, we will be talking about creatine, what it is, who takes it, who shouldn't take it, how much should you take. Fun fact, Americans consume over 4 million kilograms of creatine a year. That's a lot. Creatine is naturally found in the body. It is also found in red meat products, so you'll hear people say that a lot. It's also found in seafood and pill and powder form. So unless you plan on eating like 2 pounds of beef, I would probably suggest getting a creatine monohydrate supplement.
Every day, 1 to 2% of intramuscular creatine is naturally degraded into creatinine, a metabolic byproduct, and is excreted through urine. So an average person should replenish this loss roughly 1 to 3 grams a day. Like she just said, 1 pound of uncooked beef only gives you 1 to 2 grams. So unless you want to, every day eat like 3 pounds of uncooked beef, you can supplement with this. So you are replenishing those lost creatine stores.
In worst case, let's just say you did take too much. It's just excreted through urine. So
yeah, I mean, you took the whole bottle at once. You
yes.
probably have some.
So
GI
we'll get into the dosage in a minute. 3 reasons why creatine works in the body. It delays the accumulation of hydrogen ions. Why is that important?
So it's acting like a buffer. So when you're exercising, your body will start to produce lactate the more intense the exercise gets. Moderate intensity, if you're producing some lactate, your body is able to clear it. But once you hit a certain intensity, your body starts to produce lactate at a faster rate than it can clear. So the lactate accumulates. When this happens, hydrogen ions start to accumulate in the blood, and that's when your blood turns acidic, and you never want your blood pH to be acidic. That's when that burning sensation occurs and your muscles start to fatigue and your performance starts to decline.
And if people aren't even sure, how are they going to tell, like, am I acidic or alkaline? There's always like the pH strips, I guess, but that's an extreme case, I think. But in case you're curious, pH strips would be, or blood work would be the only way that would really tell you. And then, so it's acting as a shuttle. So the creatine will help impact the way the ATP comes out of the mitochondria and then gets put to the part of the body that needs that energy most. Obviously, it can't just say like, it's going to go from this pinky to here. It doesn't get to choose. So it really goes through the entire body, but the area that needs it most gets it most. But why does the ATP matter? What is ATP?
The energy currency of the body, basically. So ATP is, to us, it's like the gas in a car. So our ATP is our energy source.
So that's the best way of explaining it from a non-scientific standpoint, because if you just say ATP, some people are like, oh yeah, they've heard it. They have no idea what it is.
No.
So it's like the gas for a car.
Yeah.
It is the fuel for our bodies. All right, so benefits of creatine. Anyone that has or plays a high intense sport, short duration, 10 seconds or less, it would be the most beneficial for them because of the anaerobic metabolism aspect. So sprinters, powerlifters, weightlifters, even some sports like volleyball where you just do like quick little bursts here and there. But endurance athletes could also benefit.
Yeah, I would still say it's benefiting any athlete, and your aerobic based or your crossover athletes like soccer players who were sometimes in anaerobic, sometimes in aerobic metabolism, because again, it's delaying the onset of hydrogen ion accumulation and therefore that metabolic acidosis, that burning sensation, the fatigue from occurring, so they can perform at a higher intensity longer. So their performance increases. And it's also aiding in recovery though too after an intense training or exercise session. So that's again why I would say it benefits any athlete.
Additional benefits, I think that's what most people want to know, is increased muscle hypertrophy, which is overall size of the muscle. So people take creatine sometimes purely for aesthetics purposes. They're like, hey, this guy with a really good body took it, I want to take it. Or like, wow, that girl looks good, I'm going to take it. Muscular strength, improved muscular power, improves sprint performance. And by sprint, we mean anything that's just short duration, quick bursts. Glycogen synthesis, which is also very important. Reduction of muscle acidosis, which she talked about. You don't want your blood to be acidic. You don't want your muscles to be acidic. You don't really want anything to be acidic. So that's why sometimes knowing the pH is really important for all the nerds out there that want to know like I do. Improve cognitive function and mental fatigue, reducing it. I feel like that's alone in itself good enough to take it.
Mm-hmm. So who should take creatine? Again, it's a no-brainer for anaerobic athletes or in general any athlete. It's also, though, we found it has a hyperhydration effect. So just like carbohydrates, creatine is osmotic, meaning it likes to retain water. So there was a study that we read. It showed that the creatine enhanced tolerance to exercise in the heat due to increased intracellular water and reduced thermoregulatory and cardiovascular responses to prolonged exercise. So, for example, their sweat rate, they didn't lose as much sweat. So, would you think maybe that a creatine loading phase in this case could be more beneficial for an athlete that knows they're about to perform in an intense heat condition?
I would definitely think the loading phase for this type of person is almost necessary, not necessary, but would be very beneficial.
Mm-hmm.
So basically, if you play a sport or you do any activity that requires you to go from Virginia in February, where it's kind of cold, to Florida, where it could be 80, 85 degrees, you might be one of those people that would especially benefit from a loading phase of creatine. And I know a lot of teams out here, they go from like the dead of winter down to Florida.
I would say it's like a no-brainer because you'd be saturating the creatine stores. You'd be holding on to more water weight, right? So your intracellular, the cells themselves are holding more water. So then if you go from Virginia in February down to Florida and your body's not used to exercising in the heat, you won't necessarily like have as much sweat loss. Your temperature will be more controlled.
It's almost like everyone, for the most part, takes protein after their workouts as like just a staple to their daily living. And I almost wonder if this would be like the staple for pre-workout or any time during the day, since the time you take it doesn't matter.
Mm-hmm.
Technically, the staple before you work out is pre-workout, which is caffeine, but we're not even sure that you should be mixing the two together. To be determined. Enhanced recovery from injury. Marina?
Okay, McKenna. So an article we looked at concluded that creatine supplementation improved cross-sectional area of the muscle fiber and peak strength up to 25% or more during a rehab protocol compared to those not given the creatine. So basically, one group was given creatine, one group was not. The group that was given the creatine, they were able to retain their strength and the muscle size didn't atrophy or get smaller as much as the group that was not given the creatine. So the group that was under the placebo lost strength and lost muscle size at a greater rate than the group that had the creatine.
So I wonder if this would be the same if we took the same concept, one group with creatine, one group without, and then we made both groups exercise the same amount, because this talks about rehabilitation. What if it was just like healthy population? The results would still be in favor of the workout group who is taking creatine, but I don't know. Do you think it would still be 25% increase? That is a crazy high increase. We don't know. There's probably a study out there. Maybe we should do it.
Yeah.
Aging. Oh, aging. Creatine has been shown to lower cholesterol and triglyceride levels, which is very important. You probably go to your doctor and they say, hey, this level's too high, this level's too high. This would be great to have you get those numbers a little bit lower. Reduce fat accumulation in the liver. Nobody wants fatty liver. That is a disease. It's not good. It's very hard to undo once you have it. So prevention would be the best. Minimize bone loss, because as you age, the bones deteriorate a little bit more. And that's where you hear like osteoporosis and all these things, or like, oh, my grandma fell and broke her hip just, tripping over a stick.
I've fallen and I can't get up.
And you always wonder why they're like breaking things so easily, but it's true.
Another type of disease too that creatine can help is actually type 2 diabetes. So creatine can decrease hemoglobin A1C and increase the protein GLUT4 translocation. GLUT4 translocation is important for diabetics because GLUT4 is a protein that allows glucose to be pulled from the blood into the cell. So a diabetic has high blood sugar. When they eat something, they can't get the sugar into their cells to be used. So they're just walking around daily with the glucose just staying in their blood because their GLUT4 protein isn't moving like it should. So creatine's actually been shown that it can help move those GLUT4s translocated around the cell where it should be, and it helps pull then the glucose into the cells of the body to be used for different things.
So the creatine will help the GLUT4, which in turn, long story short, will help it get into the cell and overall lower A1C levels.
Yeah, it's lowering the blood sugar content.
So it seems to be from the research extremely beneficial for type 2 diabetics, but I don't know enough about type 1 diabetes to say anything. But type 2, it seems like it would be such an easy thing to even try to see if it can lower your A1C. And that's like a trigger word for people. They'll be like, I have to lower my A1C. I have to lower that. My doctor said, or, my triglycerides, my cholesterol. So those are the things that we want to go after. Vegetarians, vegans, obviously they're going to have lower numbers of intramuscular creatine stores. So they're not eating red meat unless they are a fake vegetarian.
Yes.
So chances are they'll be most likely to need a supplement of a pill or a powder.
Like we mentioned earlier, the loading phase. So just starting off, it's recommended. This is, you can find this recommendation in this book. You can also find it in the articles that we studied. But the recommendation is 0.3 grams per kilogram a day for 5 to 7 days. So that's roughly 20 to 25 grams a day. After that loading phase, then you'll just go through a maintenance phase where you're taking 3 to 5 grams a day.
And this is what 5 grams looks like, if you're wondering.
Yes.
So to start for the loading phase, you would take 4 to 5 scoops of this spread out throughout the day.
Not at once.
Not at once. And then once you go into the maintenance phase, you would just take 1 scoop per day. And if you're a bigger person, probably like 1.5, 2 scoops.
I would say, yeah, like the article we read said, if you're a larger athlete or you're just somebody that's, in like an elite marathon runner and some elite cyclist, it's recommended 5 to 10 grams a day. And then clinical population too, it varies from 10 to 30 grams depending on if you're born with a creatine deficiency or depending on the disease that you have.
Real quick, so I'm holding a creatine powder supplement. And if you go to Google and just type in creatine, please make sure you're typing creatine monohydrate because there are other types of creatine and I don't want to be responsible for you ordering those. So we're specifically talking about creatine monohydrate.
Because that's the most studied form.
And the brands, we're not going to get into that in this video. Just choose one, see how you like it. Everyone will have their preference, but some are flavored even. I have a non-flavored one, but creatine monohydrate.
Would you say the timing matters?
I used to think timing mattered for everything.
I used to think that too.
And now I'm starting to think with some things it just doesn't matter. It's just take it, you know?
So this would be an example where I would say, and the research would say that timing does not matter. If you're taking it for athletic purposes, just to improve performance, yes, still take it on a rest day. Because again, it's going to help.
And that's another thing even I was wrong about. I would be like, oh, I didn't work out today. I don't deserve it.
Yeah, I used to not take it on rest days.
And then I realized that's kind of, it's like almost skipping a day of like taking medication.
Yeah.
And then you're like punishing yourself, but for what? Because then you have to just like start ramping it back up again.
Also to add, when you do take the creatine, it's recommended too to take it while you're eating carbohydrates. And the reason why is because again, when you eat carbs are glucose. Glucose wants to be pulled into the cell. So if you take creatine mixed with something, for example, orange juice, it'll pull into your muscle cells quicker. So the uptake of the creatine is quicker.
So that's also something I had no idea until you told me that.
Mm-hmm.
So
more
now
efficiently used by the body.
Okay, it's more efficient. So it's kind of like, you know how people take their protein within their anabolic window 45 minutes after exercise? I'm sure we'll do a video on that too.
Yes.
So it's kind of like, okay, let's just, if you're going to take it, why don't you just take it and maximize the effects?
Like if you just took it with water, you're still going to have an effect. You'll still have a benefit, but it's just more effective if you took it with a carbohydrate. It gets there quicker, right? It's not delayed. Just more efficient.
Does it matter like what carbohydrate? Because I feel like people that are watching this are going to say carbohydrates and they're going to go eat like 5 bagels and say that two girls on YouTube told them to.
I would like mix it with some orange juice, or you could literally
some orange juice. We're talking
not a
like
whole bottle.
We're talking
like that much orange juice.
The only side effect is water retention. Some may call it weight gain. I don't want to call it that because it's very misleading and people will start panicking if we say, take this powder, you will gain weight. That's not the case. It is only water retention because it's holding water within the cells.
So all those other claims that creatine can cause injury or dehydration, or it's bad for your kidneys, or it causes muscle cramping or GI distress, the research has shown that those claims are false.
So it's like, that's why looking at the research is so important, because you hear so much crap online.
Or even like here,
if
I'll
you-
like talk about creatine to clients here, and they're like, they say these things. They say it'll make me gain weight, or
Yes.
it's bad for the kidneys, or I thought it made me dehydrated.
So our job is just to educate people, because people just truly don't know, and they say it's like the
they
old,
listen to social
it's like the
media.
it's like the telephone game where it's like you say one thing and then
Yeah.
as it gets down the line, it's like totally butchered.
Mhm.
But social media also has ruined everything almost. So it takes people to do the research, which is a little tedious, and figure out, okay, how can we get this information out to the general public? And this conversation came up because a 13-year-old I trained in one of our groups a couple weeks ago asked me, my dad takes creatine. Should I take it? And she's in 8th grade. And I was like, huh. And she just, everything her dad did, she said she wanted to do. So she said he took scoops of pre-workout into his mouth without even having a mix or anything. And I was like, do not do that. But is there anything wrong with someone under the age of 18, 17, 16? I don't know the answer to that. So when in doubt, from a legal standpoint, I would say 18 and older. But then you see like energy drinks, you see like 14-year-olds chugging them.
Yeah.
And that to me is so much worse. So if you're not sure, I would probably just consult your physician and explain. If you're 13 or 14, they're probably going to ask you like, why are you taking this?
Yeah.
But if you're like a serious like lifter or something, or a serious athlete, maybe they'd say like, hey, it's fine for you. Like just stick to the dosage.
Mm-hmm.
But I definitely don't think it's something that like getting into the wrong hands. I can see kids just like pouring it in here.
Yeah, I would say if you're not 18 years of age, but it's under like supervision, you are training for something, I don't think it would have a detrimental effect. But again,
but I would still say like,
you're-
even if it is under supervision, so if this girl started taking it and she's 13 because her dad takes it, her dad might not know any of the research.
yeah.
So like he doesn't know. So that's why like you really need to ask a physician at least, so they can either tell you an answer or go look up the answer, or give you an actual realistic reason why you should or should not take it. You can't just say like, I'm taking it because my dad said it's okay. Like,
no.
Dads are wrong sometimes. It's okay. The good news is creatine is not banned by any sport organization. So it's not going to like throw up a red flag or flag you for blood doping or something crazy. Mm-hmm. I would definitely buy it from a trusted source though, because you don't know. Now people put crazy stuff into anything. So is it going to make me bulky?
It's not going to make you bulky. So sometimes, especially females, they're under the impression if they take creatine, it's going to make them bulky. That's not true. That's not how it works. The reason you see like bodybuilders, they're big, right? They take creatine most of the time. Is because when you take creatine, you have higher PCR stores, right? So you're able to push yourself longer without that lactate and hydrogen ions accumulating. You're staying out of that anaerobic glycolysis for longer. So again, you're pushing yourself harder at a higher intensity. Your weights go up. When your weights go up, your strength goes up, hypertrophy, right? You're constantly in a state of like progressive overload. That's why bodybuilders, when they take this, they start to see a lot of size. So if, you know, a female took this and just sat around, they're not going to get bulky. It's all about, are you taking this, but are you seeing improvements in your performance?
There's so many things that you have to track. Like, are you taking this? Are you eating a ton of carbs? Are you eating a ton of protein? And are you lifting some crazy weight or crazy amount of volume? And that's another big issue with people. They say, oh yeah, I can't take that. It's going to make me bulky. I don't want to be bulky. Oh, I can't do this because I'll be bulky. And I'm like, are you going to like the Olympics and something that I don't know about? So just figuring out when to take it, how much to take, but also like, how do you know, oh, I feel the creatine working? Like bodybuilders, who knows what they take, when they take it, the amount they take? Sidestep all the other stuff. The research for creatine says that it will help you have phosphocreatine stores for longer. So like Marina said, you can just exercise for a longer duration without
At a higher intensity.
at a
Like,
higher
push
intensity
yourself more.
without feeling like garbage.
Yes.
Well, I hope you enjoyed learning about creatine. If you have any questions, please comment or contact us. I'm sure we will be doing a lot of videos regarding other topics, so stay tuned.
Follow us on Instagram. There, you can cut that in there. I just did it. You're welcome.